Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today in this session, we are going to build GraphQL API using Node, Express and Apollo GraphQL. We are going to see how we can build GraphQL API from scratch using Apollo GraphQL library. Here we are going to use Apollo Express specific package to build GraphQL API. If we can also be using Apollo Fastify package if we have to build Node Fastify combination, right? So here we are using Apollo GraphQL Express package to build GraphQL API. So let's get started. So let us understand the basics of GraphQL before we get started with building GraphQL API with the help of Node, Express and Apollo combination. So what we have learned earlier that for building a GraphQL API, what are the key components? So first is the type definitions. The group of type definitions termed as schema basically. Schema is required to define all those types and corresponding resolvers needs to be defined for corresponding to each type. Like suppose we created a one type like function declaration of fetching some data like books. We need to create a corresponding resolver that actually fetches the data from the store. That store can be a file or can be a third-party system or can be a database, right? And they are termed as an implementation of those types. We need to create a type and the corresponding implementation. Like in the world of REST API, we talked in terms of routes and the corresponding handlers. So here in the GraphQL API world, we talked in terms of types and talks in terms of resolvers. So types are equivalent to routes, we can say in REST API world, but because in the GraphQL world, the endpoint is same, like always the same, /GraphQL. But in case of REST, the endpoints keeps on changing basis on the requirement, etc. But in case of GraphQL, we always post the request on the /GraphQL endpoint. So basically we talk in terms of the request query and talks in terms of the implementation with the help of resolvers. So we always have to create the types and resolvers and bind them together with the help of third-party library. Here in case of Apollo, we are going to use Apollo Express package to bind them together. But in case of GraphQL plain or Express, normal Express GraphQL package, we saw that thing in the earlier sessions. So here we are going to use Apollo Express package to bind them together. So first we will define type definitions, then we will create corresponding implementation with the help of resolvers, then we are going to bind them together with the help of Apollo Express package. So let's get on the VS Code. So first we are going to we should have NodeJS installed in our system, whether we are sitting on Linux, Mac or Windows system, we need to have NodeJS installed. Second is we need to have the corresponding packages installed, like we need to have Express because we are building it with the help of Express. If we need to move towards Fastify, then we have to install Fastify, whatever the corresponding package we are actually going with the Node.js. The third is the GraphQL itself, like which is the core, so that every library uses. And the fourth one is corresponding library. Here we are going to use Apollo Express package. So we are going to use this package. So these are the things which are needed for building up the GraphQL API. So let's get on the board. From this board to the VS Code, I'm sitting on the empty GraphQL starter folder. So there I'm going to initiate our Node.js project. There we will be installing all those dependencies which are required for building our application, that is GraphQL API for the starter GraphQL API. What are the things that I need to install? So first I will be initiating a Node project for the first time. Here I have the Node installed already in my system. So npm init-y will create a simple Node.js project with the package.json. So then we have to install all those dependencies. So npm install Apollo, whatever the packages we have talked about. We need Express, we need GraphQL, we need Apollo Server Express, and finally we need a Apollo Server Core package. Then hit enter. It will going to install all those packages and we are get started with, right? Here we are going to create one small file, server.js, which will be holding our code. First we define types, then resolvers, and then finally we will be binding that, and then we are going to start that server. So I just, for the sake of brevity, I just kept it very simple. I'm not going to type it to keep it short. Let me just open the VS Code where the server.js file is already prepared for you. Like I have named it as app.js. So just open it up. So this is the file that actually encapsulates all those details, all those coding, type definition, resolvers and binding. I'm going to walk you through one by one what all lines are doing here. So first of all, we need an Express. We need to import Express to use the Express server. So here we are going to take an analogy of, like, suppose you are building a GraphQL API for fetching books, right? Like client is making a request to fetch books related data. Suppose you are building online book store application or online library application, and you are hitting a GraphQL API to fetch books from that server. So here we have created a type definition. So how we are going to create a type definition in case of Apollo? So here GQL is basically a template function given by Apollo to pass that GraphQL query into AST, abstract syntax tree. So this is we are going to use throughout the sessions going forward. First, for the type definition, what we have to do, we have what is the key type, that is query is the type, because here the example is we are taking is fetching the data. So here we are using query. If you have to manipulate the data, we can use mutation, or we should use mutation, I would say. In case of query, we have to use type as query. So this query block, type query block, will hold all the types, like it is the root query. So all the types, whatever is the custom type you are going to declare, you are going to create within this GQL block, will be part of this query. So here what we are doing, we are saying that, okay, this is it is equivalent to a function declaration. You can think of it just to make it simple. So here what we are trying to say, we are saying that, okay, the operation name is books. Whenever the client is making a request with the name books, then that it is more equivalent to, those who are familiar with TypeScript, it's more equivalent to that. What it says, the operation name is books, and on the right side of the column, here it is within the array syntax, right? So what it says, it returns an array of book. So what is book here? Book is the custom type that we have created on top of it. So this is we created, it can be anything. Like here in this case, we need an array of book, so we define a book as a type. So book is an object type which encapsulate these two fields, like title and author are the two fields of this book, which is of type string, which is a scalar types. So title is of type string and author is of type string. So here this query says that this books is an operation and it returns an array of book. So this is how we actually define the type definitions. And now this, since it is a function declaration, it is not doing itself anything. So we need to have some definition corresponding to that declaration, like resolvers here, which in case of REST API, you kind of creating the handlers. Here in case of GraphQL, we are actually creating the resolvers. So corresponding to books operation, we need to have the similar implementation, like the similar name in the operation. So in the case of resolvers also, here we actually mapping the type within the query. So the topmost block will say query. So if I'm implementing any operation corresponding to a query, then the top should be query here. And here the operation name is books. So the operation name is again books. So this is not accepting any input argument, like we are not passing any argument here. So we are keeping it like this. So it means that it is not accepting any parameter. So it is empty. Now this is basically an arrow function. We can create it in the form of a function, or simple function. Here is just to keep it simple. This is an arrow function which is simply returning a books. So where these books come from? These books come from this array. So this, to keep it simple, so it is coming from an array, but in reality, it can come from a database, or it can come from an API call to third party, or it can come from a file system, right? So its objective is to return books. So, and then we have to like create the Express server using this Express function. Then we created a Apollo server instance. Within that Apollo server instance, now here Apollo server instance act as a binding that I talked on the whiteboard. We need to create a type definition, we need to create a resolver, and there should be a binding function. So here the Apollo server instance actually act as a binding function. So in that configuration of Apollo server, we need to pass in the type definition as well as the resolvers. Rest other configuration can be passed, but these are the important one. These are the mandatory one, important one. So we need to pass in the type definition and the resolvers. So Apollo instance, then Apollo instance server, basically that within that Apollo instance, we need to start that one it internally. It is not the actual Express server, I would say. Basically Express here in the Express, we are passing the Apollo server instance as a middleware using this function apply middleware. Then then the Express instance is listening on port 4000. So it will get started. So let us start this instance and we'll see on the browser how actually the query can be made on this GraphQL API. Let's save it. I think it gets edited. So let me open the terminal and then we'll fire this up, and we will be typing in node app.js. It will spin up the Express server at port 4000, and let me open the browser and we'll see how it looks. As soon as you open up the browser at port 4000, open up the localhost at 4000, what it shows? It shows a Apollo specific ID, Apollo specific UI, where it says that, okay, you want to use my application to query GraphQL. You can click on this query your server, or here this also gives an option of making a request with the help of curl. So I'm just clicking on this query your server button. Here in this, it by default fills in this operation as this example query with the ID. But since it is showing up the error, let me just show you what the query is all about here. Since we have to fetch the books using the GraphQL request. So what we have to do, we have to click on this again, and then we have to choose the fields. So what all fields we are interested in. Here you can select this plus. So it plus says that, okay, plus says that choose all the fields which is underneath. You can select a specific operation here itself, like books. Now within the books, what fields you are interested in? You are interested to get only the title of the book, or you are interested to get only the author of the book. So you can choose from here itself. So I just want to get the title of the book with the help of the request. So what I'm going to do, I'm just hitting the query like this. So here you see that we are requesting only the title. So it gives us the only the title. If you want to get title and author both in this query, how query builds, we have to type in query because we are interested in query. If you are interested in manipulating some data, you should be typing in mutation that we have covered in the GraphQL basics video. So here we have to create a query, and in the query the operation name needs to be mentioned. Here the operation name is books, and within that we are mentioning title and author as the fields. You can also type in here, or you can make use of this ID, or you can also make use of your favorite ID like GraphQL Playground, or you can make use of the Postman as well to make the GraphQL query. So here I am demonstrating the Apollo ID, what's the feature they are offering to us. So now you just have to click on this query. It will now fetch the title and author both. So this is the power of GraphQL. Like whatever the client requests, it gives us the data accordingly. If we want to omit whatever from the client request, the fields which we are not interested in, it will not give us those fields. So it will save some bandwidth in that respect, right? So these are the few things. Like if you go to this schema option in the Apollo one, you will get to see all what is the schema is all about. Here the schema consists of two types. One is the query, second is the book, which is the custom type we have created. So here you will see two objects. One is the book and second is the query. So it will give the good picture of our schema and what are the scalars. Here only two are the scalars, like title and author are scalar types. Now in the SDL portion of it, schema definition language, it actually makes use of schema definition language. Here you can see the row schema with the help of this SDL tab. So yeah, there are multiple things to be explored here. I will cover it in the next session. Although we have covered this with the help of a single file, we can also improve this further. Like we can move this type definition in a separate file, resolvers in a separate file, and make this as cleaner, because this is not the reality in the production, right? We need to organize the things in a better manner. So for that purpose, I've created another project which is like session 6 better. Basically it says that we actually organized the files separately. So here in the server.js file, it's very lean. It simply make use of the resolvers and types definitions from different files and use the same thing. Like here we are passing the type definition and resolvers, and along with that there are a couple of options which we are passing as a configuration. Like it by default gives us, Apollo by default gives us protection from CSRF and other plugins which is related to when we want to stop, when we are calling a stop function on the server, then it automatically drains out, like it will not entertain the any new request from the client. So everything is same. Here also one more configuration is given. By default, when we do not pass this path, it will actually be exposed as /GraphQL. I just want to show this as a demonstration to you. we can update that GraphQL endpoint. Instead of /GraphQL, you can have /API/GraphQL, whatever you would like to have. So in this session, we talked about how we can build GraphQL API with the help of Node, Express, and Apollo GraphQL combination. And also we talked about how we can use Apollo Studio to make a GraphQL query and also explore various features around it. In the upcoming sessions, we are going to talk about GraphQL types, pagination, validation as per the series. So please stay tuned with us. Consider subscribing if you do not want to miss any upcoming videos in this series. Thank you so much. Till then, bye-bye.